Well, thank you for coming back to our devotionals for this Easter week. And we've reached Thursday. And so it's time for us to focus on something a little bit even closer now. We're starting to get to these final little events that were going on, some pretty major events, really. But some stuff that was happening. Obviously, we think about the Lord's Supper, or what we call communion. But another part of that is, as we have demonstrated here today, with the pitcher and the basin and some towels, the issue of washing feet. And I know that that may seem like it's really strange to us, but let me read it from the scripture, and then let me try to apply it in a little bit of a way, a modern way, that we could try to follow even in these days. So let me read, first of all, John 13 and verse number 5. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. And then down a little bit further, verse 12. So after he had washed their feet and had taken his garments and was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye what I have done to you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say, Well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that ye should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent greater than he that sent him. So Jesus was saying here, I've washed your feet. Now I want you to follow that example. So our question is, do we still wash each other's feet? Obviously, some churches, that would still be a common practice. We've tried it before. Obviously, that's not the case this year. But kind of demonstrated here with these items, this is what would be taking place in that sort of a setting. But is that the modern context? Is that what God is asking of us even in these days? And I want to just give you another thought along that way, how we can apply that in this day. One example maybe I would give to you from, 100 years ago plus, the story of the Salvation Army. When it was just early getting going and really starting to make a difference, people began to flock from around the world. They wanted to be involved in this new venture in ministry. And Kent and Barbara Hughes tell a little bit about one particular event when these groups of people, or maybe even individuals around the world, were coming to join with General Booth in this new endeavor. And a man by the name of Samuel Logan Brengle had a fine pastorate here in the United States, but he felt like he was maybe to go and join in with the Salvation Army. And so he went over and he tried to join forces. He met up with General Booth. But for some reason, General Booth seemed sort of cautious and reluctant to take Brengle into the army. And so maybe even as a sort of a test for him, he gave him the job to, I think maybe it was in the basement, kind of an out-of-the-way place. He gave him the job of cleaning the other recruits' boots or shoes. And so there Brengle is. He's left this fine position in the United States. Now he's here. He's sort of questioning, did I mess up? This can't be God's will. This isn't what God asked me to do. Here I am all in just shining shoes or cleaning them. And so I know there was, from what the story is told anyway, there must have been quite a bit of questioning, and you can imagine that. But one day, at least, as he was doing his task, as he'd been asked to do, he, in that period of discouragement and questioning, it seemed as though, almost as though it was a vision, he could see the Lord leaning over the feet of those rough fishermen, those rough disciples, and washing their feet. And he kind of got a little better understanding. He even whispered right there as he's shining shoes, said, Lord, you wash their feet. I will black their shoes. And he was willing to take on that role of a servant. Again, we have this passage here. We, again, sometimes question how much of this are we supposed to do literally in these days. And if taken literally, I know that sometimes there is some hesitancies. Maybe people, they want to stay away from that service. I'm not interested in either washing or having my feet washed. But as you're probably aware, you maybe have heard others talk about it, this job that we're talking about here was the servant's role. It needed to be done. It was a necessary practice back then. They walked around. They had the dusty trails. The roads were not paved like we would have been familiar with, at least not all of them. And so their feet would get very dusty. And it was a lowly task. But as I thought about this in, again, the modern context, it occurred to me that maybe we could apply it in some other areas. And I'll let you even, in your own mind, think, what are some tasks that are not very fun? They're not really even appreciated sometimes. Maybe I don't get very much honor or prestige from this job, but it's necessary. And it occurred to me that maybe we could apply it in one area. You may prefer to use that issue of shining shoes, though even that has kind of gone out of vogue as far as an actual job. We don't have the shoe shines on the street, anymore. But I thought of one that maybe you don't necessarily care for and might fit into this category, and that is the issue of washing dishes. And so you may say, oh, no, that's not my job. I stay out of the kitchen. That's a woman's work, or that's the children's work, or whatever it is for your family. But that's exactly the point. The washing of feet was not Jesus' job either. It was the servant's job. And yet he took on the role of a servant, and he was willing to wash their feet. If you've had chores in your home that included washing dishes, maybe it'd be something like this. Well, it's not my turn. I did mine last week, or whatever it may be for your family. I've already taken care of it. It's your turn. And really, to be fair, it's not really often very appreciated. We may prefer, especially if there's company or something, but we may prefer we want to go to the living room. We want to go visit. We want to let somebody else do the servant's role. And yet maybe that kind of brings it pretty well right down to this area. And we'd say, oh, well, Lord, help me to do the servant's task. Even when I don't want to, even when I'd rather do something else. It may not be washing dishes. You may even, for your job, it might be certain parts of the job that there's just sort of the common labor. It's the part that's not really appreciated. In washing dishes, you don't usually get thanked, but maybe criticized if they weren't done right. Maybe also the case at another job. So the issue for us maybe is to just say, Lord, help me in my own job, whatever that foot washing role may be for me. In my setting, help me to simply do it as though I'm doing it for you. Help me to take on the role of a servant. Help me to find a particular place this week that I could do something maybe nobody else even wants to do. Nobody else will appreciate it, but I'm going to do it for you. I want to be the servant that you've showed us that you were and that you wanted us to be. And so today, I'd encourage you, start thinking a little bit about that and just ask God how maybe you could be a servant. Who can you show Jesus to? Who can you show who you're following? Well, as your homework, do your best to be a servant even today. And God bless you as you start thinking about that and as you take on those lowly tasks for God's glory.